In 2023, it almost feels like a bit of a cliche to say that Antoine Dupont, the 47 Test French captain, is a world-class rugby player. It's just one of those things that is a known fact, something that the rugby-loving general public just don't tend to even debate. Dupont has participated in 7 seasons worth of the Six Nations Championship, yet he has won player of the tournament 3 times, while this year he became just the second player to win the award back-to-back. But yet every time I watch a test match involving France, I still feel this aura of Dupont being underappreciated, underrated, like the public truly don't even get how good this guy actually is. Tim of the Egg Chasers Rugby podcast has started a YouTube channel to deliver extra content to his audience, and has even gone as far to say that Dupont is up there with the top 10 rugby players of all time. While I think it's a big call to say that at this stage of Dupont's career, given the fact that he's 26 years old, if he can keep up the momentum he is right now, I will certainly be agreeing with Tim by the end of Dupont's career. But what makes Dupont so good? What's made him this huge celebrity with brand deals alongside Adidas, Land Rover and Tissot to go with his wax figure at Musée Grévin? Well guys, to start off this video, I'm going to take a bit of a tour of French rugby history so we can actually establish the importance of Antoine Dupont in that nation's history. The 2011 Rugby World Cup is well documented for having an edge-of-your-seat final with Richie McCaw playing on a broken foot, the French team going rogue on their coach after losses to Tonga and the All Blacks during the pool stages, Thierry Dusautoir winning World Player of the Year, and finally Stephen Donald's kick. Sure, the French had plenty to celebrate in 2011, finishing the tournament with a far better record than expected. Vincent Clerc was also the joint highest try scorer of the competition. 2011 was for Les Bleus what 2015 was for the All Blacks. A huge, triumphant high point of an empire, followed by a long period of rotch, decay and toxicity. Marc Livremont's coaching career was over at just 43 years old, while his successor, Philippe Saint-André, was not offered a contract extension as head coach by the FFR, ending his tenure with a win rate of just 44%. Not only was Philippe Saint-André the first French coach since 1973 to have a win rate below 50%, but his tenure's expiry date was confirmed before the 2015 World Cup, prior to a 13-62 loss at the hands of the All Blacks in a quarter-final in Cardiff. The All Blacks did the same thing to the French as you should do. To the subscribe button, absolutely smash it. But believe it or not, ladies and gents, French rugby was actually about to get far worse. While the FFR hired Guy Novès as the head coach for 2016, he hadn't won a trophy as a head coach since 2012. Novès' France were literally whitewashed by Alistair Coetzee Springboks in a mid-year series in 2017. They lost to Argentina in 2016 before drawing with Japan for the first time in their history. Novès became the first French coach in history to get sacked, finishing his tenure off with a win rate of 33.33%. Novès' time as the French coach was pretty bleak overall and was probably the lowest point in the history of French rugby. However, with every dark period of history, there comes a light at the end of the tunnel. For the end of the Roman Empire, we got the Renaissance, and for the darkness of French rugby in the 2010s, we got the test debut of Antoine Dupont, who made his test debut against Italy in 2017, coming on for the last 8 minutes of the test. Dupont went on to make his first start for France against the All Blacks later this year on just his 4th test cap. Although the video quality still available from this game is very low at 360p, about the same quality as the overall state of French rugby in 2017, Dupont didn't actually look out of place for a 20-year-old. I was personally really impressed with his performance at the basics of his role during the game, and he also got to start again against South Africa the following week. Anyway guys, let's get back to our wee history lesson now that we've explained how Dupont fits into the picture. Novès' successor as the French head coach was Jacques Brunel. Although Brunel was the same age as Novès, being 65 years old at the time of his last test in charge of France, at least he actually had ideas at coach, though many of them were thoroughly out of date. The brief Brunel batterings proved to be more of a case of growing pains for France rather than them having a bad head coach, as they took several losses in 2018. Many will point to Brunel's 22% win rate with Italy as him being a bad coach. However, Brunel was at least an old school hard man able to fire Italy up and lead them to 4 wins in the Six Nations, while Brunel had indeed won trophies as a head coach before, having already performed a huge cleanup of the local club scene to move the focus away from signing overseas superstars. The FFR wanted for Brunel to retire as head coach of his own country by laying a platform for a world-class successor. The 2018 season for France features just 3 wings, with Dupont playing just 4 tests off the bench due to injury, while Brunel used that season to develop a playing style, with his key innovation being the use of a centre on the wing. This innovation is now a prime feature of the French attack structure that I've discussed in a previous upload. Having been given a brief to expose the next generation of Frenchmen to test rugby, Brunel began to do exactly that in 2019 after 2 straight losses to Wales and England, forcing his hands to completely change the face of his inside backs. Brunel elevated Dupont to be the starting 9, while trusting his 19-year-old Toulouse teammate Romain Ntamack as the 10. While Brunel didn't have the time left to save his win percentage as the French coach, he did have the time to do with France what he couldn't do with Italy, and lay the foundations of a renaissance. With Dupont and Ntamack as his 9-10 combo, France lost just 3 more tests in 2019, including a single point loss in their World Cup quarter-final, while Dupont scored his first 4 test tries that year and started in that quarter-final against Wales. The other main reason Brunel was able to lay these foundations for France was the fact that the FFR put his successor, Fabien Galthié, in as an assistant coach for the World Cup. Under Brunel's erratic but effective tutelage, Galthié and his key decision makers were able to utilise 2019 as an effective trial run for 2023, the home-hosted Rugby World Cup. The Galthié era, as I've described in previous videos, began with a genuine roaring start, with this here being the only reason that France didn't win the Six Nations. Although this event I've shown to you guys did take place, France for the first time in a long time were playing really well, playing just free-flowing rugby with their instincts, communication and actual structure for the first time in a very long time. As the Six Nations went on in 2020, it was clear that Dupont and his Toulouse teammates were having the international team built around their club level teamwork. The tactics in particular were excelling at enabling Dupont as well. After this ad break, we'll move on to the obvious potential of Dupont's being realised. While most of us want to pretty much forget about everything else that happened in 2020, it did give us a warm-up test between Wales and France, which effectively served as Dupont's coming-of-age performance. Don't get me wrong guys, we'd seen plenty of performances from the world-class 23-year-old at the time, but this was just one of those games with the ball, every bounce of it would go your way, and Dupont got his opportunity off these and scored 2 tries for the first and only time at an international level. Believe it or not as well, France actually do have decent depth at 9. Maxime Lucu, Baptiste Seran and Baptiste Quiou, they are all world-class players. The latter 2 have actually captained France at some stage of their career. This game though, this was the moment where we got the concrete evidence to show Dupont being better than the rest, and why such world-class players are always stuck on the bench until 5 minutes to go when Dupont is playing for France. What we see right now after Dupont's pass to Ntamack is the second method of beating a rush defence. In previous uploads, I've previously discussed Warren Gatland's Wales and Rassie Erasmus's Springboks repeatedly charging at the fringes of the ruck to take out England's rush defence. What we are getting here from Wales is 2 waves of rush defence operating at different times. We'll compare my analysis of the 2019 England side to show the clearly established first and second waves of the defence. However, due to Dupont being such a world-class player, there is a gigantic hole in wave 1 of the Welsh rush defence. We skip back a few frames to show Tipperick and co hooked in by Dupont holding the ball, therefore taking an extra few seconds to spread out. They aren't willing to spread as quickly as they need to because they fear what Dupont can do. In an ideal world, Rhys Carre would be standing in position here, but he hasn't been able to move out from his current position due to Tipperick's fixation on Dupont. That's why there's such a huge gap while the pass to Ntamack is mid-air. Ntamack is in a reasonable position to utilise the 4 carriers on his outside, chip the ball over the top, or cross-kick to Aldred. Because Dupont literally sits there and exists though, Ntamack gets a gap to run through, spots it, and overrides the game plan. The minute that Ntamack engages the halfway line though, Dupont already has the awareness to notice what his teammate is doing. Though the picture quality over here is very bad, Dupont's eyeline follows this arrow to show us that he can foresee the line break in advance. That's why once Halfpenny tackles Ntamack, Dupont is already in position to take the pass and land just 5 meters from the try line before Cyril Bailly gets the try. Dupont's game management goes without saying, so I don't intend on spending the whole video discussing that. I'm simply just going to keep going down the path of what makes him so exceptional. He can do the basics and is the world's best at them, but we need to show what sets him apart from the rest. What we've got in the 31st minute of the game is a 4-man hands down the line formation while Ntamack is over here behind this formation, tracking around with Virimi Vakatawa in front of him. These two are hidden in behind, able to make late entries into this hands down the line formation. The 5 Welsh defenders on Dupont's outside are yet to realise they're outnumbered. As the extra numbers draw Wales in, we pause again with a gap for Ntamack and Vakatawa on his outside. Antoine Dupont again, however, has already foreseen the line break on a second occasion, so we'll now simply put the spotlight on him when the camera angles permit to show that while Toma and Vakatawa are busy enjoying themselves, Wales haven't spotted Dupont running on the inside, able to join the attack at the last minute before scoring a try. Want to guess how Dupont scored his second try in this game? Well guys, I can't imagine how. Once again, he works the ball out to an incredibly deep structure that's far back in the field, with 5 Welsh players sprinting like crazy at the French. As Tipperick attempts to tackle Fiku though, we see Antoine Dupont yet again running past the offside line in anticipation his teammates will come along past the gain line to create a try. This rush defense allows Vakatawa to come onto the ball at pace, fruit ninja through the gap, then suddenly get an unmarked Antoine Dupont on his inside, with Dupont crossing the try line for his first double in a test match. Another element of Dupont's game I'll deconstruct later is his kicking game. In the 66th minute, France aren't going anywhere, so he hoofs the ball into the air, aiming for it to land on the halfway line. The minute that the vision mixer cuts to the wide shot, we see the ball hang in the air for a long time, putting 4 Welsh defenders into a Y formation, unsure of its landing. The ball comes back to Dupont, and when the director asks for us to return to the wide shot, we now see a gap open again after 4 Welsh defenders look to form a ruck. Dupont uses the gap to create a try for Olivon before he's subbed off 5 minutes later. For the rest of this video, we're just going to cover what sets Dupont apart from the rest. We're going to look at Dupont's support lines, his kicking game, and also his surprising level of strength for a halfback. With Dupont having such a natural ability to run support lines, this was the one part of my French attack analysis video that I withheld from you guys just so I could save it for this video over here, because Antoine Dupont is world class at this tactic. I did that because Dupont's such natural vision over time has been adapted to change with the team, very similarly to the Sexton loop that I examined in the Johnny Sexton video that I've previously made. Let's examine a few key examples of Dupont's trademark play to see why it works so well. What we see from Dupont's disallowed try against Argentina in 2021 also gives us insight into the added layers to this technique of attack. Instead of relying on a broken fields to utilise Dupont's support lines, France attack from deep hit with far more structure. Jaminet takes a high ball wonderfully, takes the ball into contact, and Dupont then whips it away to the blind side. What we can now see in the wide shot is 4 clearly labels decoy runners to reduce Los Pumas tackling options, while Woki, the furthest back of them, is also getting a head start to clean the ruck. France use the decoy runners so they can play off 10, giving Jalabert the license to select from 3 possible carriers in the backs. The game plan's next step requires a simple use of instincts that France can eventually meet Dupont in Puma's territory. But how can they do so? Because guys, one of the 3 decoy runners is actually Dupont, who is going to continue running after being in front of Lavanini. Jalabert selects Fiku as the carrier so he can physically engage the 2-man pod on Argentina's outside before they simply play off instincts, meet with Dupont, and score what would have been a really good try if not for a knock-on at the breakdown. Once again, this shows Dupont's individual brilliance, but this also shows this natural ability has been built around and is now worked into pre-planned structures. Now guys, even though my analysis of England's humiliation at the hands of the French is my most popular ever video, there is one thing that I did miss in the build-up to Charles Ollivon's first try. While I acknowledged England looking to cover the blindside in this freeze frame, you can notice that just in a little microsecond, Jacques van Poortvliet is initially staring down the channel of Dupont and Penaud. Realistically, Dupont is running a support line where he can receive the pass. This crucial error that Van Poortvliet makes though is that Francois Cross can't move across to clean a ruck in this zone quickly enough, causing Aldrit to pass to the unmarked Ollivon. Ollivon probably would have scored off Aldrit's pass anyway, but the fact that Dupont just sits there and exists has caused Van Poortvliet to hesitate, failing to realise that his teammates haven't marked Ollivon. Dupont's support line has not just evolved from an instinct into a strike play in France's bag of tricks, but it's now evolved into a useful tool to dummy the opposition, creating space for other French players. With the ad break now done, I just want to talk about Dupont's improvement off the boot, which is a real thing that I've noticed him improve on in the last few years. Definitely helps that he's ambidextrous as well. His boot has probably become the best kicking game out of any halfback in World Rugby. Let's have a look at this part now. I first really took notice of the French aerial game when they smashed the All Blacks at Stade de France, and you can see why with a replay of this kick in the 30th minute. France get possession when Nepo Laulala knocks on, while his opposites distribute to Dupont, who usually defends away from the ruck so that he can spot strike runners and nullify them, as we'll talk about later. On this occasion though, Ioane has seen the lack of ruck clearance options available to Dupont, so gives Dupont a taste of his own medicine and rushes up. While Ioane enacts a rush defense, the three players on his outside are the only All Blacks to have completed the switch, and we now pause to see Dupont's torso turn to the open side and prepare to kick. Despite having a 103 kg centre up in his face, able to tackle him or his teammate Penaud, Dupont has recognised these three highlighted zones with an immense amount of space, one of them being what his teammates have directly in front. Dupont hoofs the ball into the air, having noticed that Brodie Retallick, a slow type 5 forward, is the only player reasonably able to cover the open side while he's marked by Fickou. Fickou is a strong defender able to make the tackle, with Dante in a likely turnover position as well, should Retallick catch the ball himself. The turnover will be relatively easy, with Jordan as the nearest teammate to Retallick. Fickou does end up catching the ball himself, allowing for a massive gain of meters for France. Now guys, what was the time between Dupont catching the ball and Fickou catching the ball in this phase? Well guys, the gap between these two moments would be 4.34 seconds. For contrast, I'd completely paused the frame to notice all this stuff, writing the script for this segment of the video in probably about 6 minutes, just to explain the stuff that Dupont can spot with lightning quick reaction time of 4.34 seconds. An earlier example of Dupont's neat, efficient kicking game was Ficcou's try against Italy in 2021, where we can see the Italian backline clearly about to apply themselves as a rush defense. Suddenly they're flat-footed as Dupont grubbers in behind, showing us another example of how to overcome a rush defense. As I said, Fickou is the try scorer for this very simple way of defeating a rush defense, created by Dupont's individual brilliance. Dupont's kicking game, as we got to see in 2023 Six Nations, is also becoming very difficult for opponents to read inside their own halves, especially considering the fact that Dupont is ambidextrous, as I said before. In this moment over here, to set up a try for Thibaut Flamand, Dupont speaks a single word to Ntamack, displaying strong spatial awareness that works seamlessly with his game management. Long story short, England have a triangle-shaped defense in the backfield. Dupont doesn't care that he's kicking inside the opposition half, then gives Ntamack a perfectly weighted kick to do this. Dupont isn't just quick thinking off the boot, but he's also excellent at spotting opposition mistakes that enable him to deploy pre-planned moves, like this one. Dupont ensures that Ntamack does not come onto the ball at pace, forcing England to defend based on reactions and not confidence. Now, considering the fact that Dupont is a halfback, one would assume that he's not a very good defender. The thing is though, he's remarkably good at it. Despite being 1.76 meters tall and 85 kgs, the guy is very naturally strong. Most notably, his tackle percentage at test level in 2022 was nearly 93%, while for this year in the Six Nations, I obviously picked him for my team of the tournament, and his tackle rate was at 92%. So that's a very, very consistent run of accurate tackling, but the most important thing, as we can see from his tackle on Willie Hines, is that it's extremely good technique as well, whereas obviously there's the Finn Russell ankle tap we all love. It's excellent. In most French defense lines, Dupont stands a few steps away from the breakdown, as said earlier in the video, with Gregory Aldred instead performing the role of a formation coach from near it. While most teams would steer away from such a move due to the 9 being their smallest player, Dupont's clear physical strength that we've highlighted, as well as his defensive stats that I previously went over, mean that France can take the liberty of a halfback in the main line. From the 46th minute onwards against the All Blacks in 2021, Dupont spends about 50 seconds as the second man in the French touchline, just waiting for the All Blacks to attempt a strike play. The All Blacks' lack of tactics is blatantly obvious. Tupaia is looking to draw defenders and then offload to create a try. Dupont, who was in 2021, not 2009, immediately wraps his arms around the ball, using himself as a speed bump, putting Pinot in perfect position to take Tupaia to ground. Wrapping his arm around the ball prevents Tupaia from switching the ball to his left hand, forcing him to simply carry and then fall short of the try line. The eventual try goes to Geordie Barrett, with Dupont reducing the speed of the try very much. While this discussion around Dupont's strength isn't exclusively around his defensive game, let's show yet another try saver from him to just display the absolute heart he plays with. Keenan runs down the outside for Ireland, kicks back inside for Hansen, who isn't able to quite get to it. While Fiku and Keenan roll around in the grass like Anakin and Padme, Hansen sees this big rubber egg at last and looks to have a certain try coming up. Dupont, however, doesn't give up. He wraps one arm around Hansen's waist and the other around his shoulder, lifts Hansen up and then goes low, giving his legs the gravitational advantage. Dupont puts his squat training to use and drags Hansen back past the line and into touch with perhaps one of the greatest try savers of all time. Finally, Dupont's carrying can be an absolute weapon for the French, as we can see from when he takes the ball into contact against Wales. So ultimately, at the end of this video, now that we've done the analysis, what makes Dupont so good? You can go over hours worth of highlight reels, see everything flashy, doesn't open space, but what sets him apart from the other halfbacks is ultimately his ability to kick, his amazing strength, and of course his support lines that are completely unparalleled. There are many other nines in the world who can really rile up their opposition. There are many other nines with pinpoint passing, but no other nines can do those 3 game elements to the same level as Dupont, and that is what sets him apart, and that is why I made today's video. I've been wanting to do this video for a very long time, as you guys can probably tell through my excitement, so thank you very much for making it to the end of this video. Remember to subscribe to me and hit the notification bell when you do so that you never miss an upload from me. Please do comment your thoughts on Dupont down below, because man, he is an absolutely world-class player. Honestly, thank you also so much to my patrons. You guys are always awesome with the support and stuff. Really appreciate it. So if you guys do have the money to afford it, please consider joining one of my 3 Patreon tiers that you can see over in the graphic. I'm also over on Instagram and over on Twitter, so you guys can support me over there. Really appreciate it once more for sticking to the end of the video. Thank you so much. I'm going to head off and edit this thing now, so I'll see you later. Cheers for watching the video, guys, from Max.